ನೋಡ್ರಿ. ಈಗ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ನೋಡ್ರಿ, ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅತನಿ ಸರ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಬಾರ್ದು. ನೀವು ಇಲ್ಲಿದ್ರೆ ಆ ಥರ ನೀವು ಹೊರಗೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಐತಿ. ಹಾಂ, ಈಗ ಸರಿ ಆಯ್ತು. ಈಗ ಸರಿ ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಬರ್ಮುನ್ನರು ಕರೀರಿ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಇಟ್ಟು. ಮೂರು ಗಂಟೆ ಆಯ್ತು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಕೋ ಯಾಕೆ ಆಗತೈತಿ ಬರ್ಮು? ಇಕೋ ಆಗತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಯಾಕೆ? ಹಾಂ, ನಾನು ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಮತ್ತಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಂತ ಹೇಳೋರು ಯಾರು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ? ಹಾಂ, ಮಾಡಿ ಪಟ್ನ ಮಾಡಿ. ಹೌದಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ಮು, ಯಾಕೆ ಹಂಗ ಆಗತೈತಿ? ನಾನಾ ಮಾತಾಡೈತಿ. ಹಾಂ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊರಗುನ ಆಗತ್ತೈತಿ ನೀಕು ಬರ್ಮು, ಯಾಕಂಗ ಆಗ್ತೈತಿ? ಈಗ ಅವ್ರು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರ ಅವ್ರ ಪಿಪಿಟಿನ, ನಾನು ಹೇಳಿಕೆ. ಹಾಂ, ಇಕೋ ಆಗ್ತೈತಲ್ಲ.
Hello, ma'am.
ಹಲೋ, ಹಲೋ ಋತುಜಾ. ಹಲೋ, हॅलो ऋतुजा. हॅलो. हॅलो ऋतुजा.
Yes, ma'am.
हां.
Good afternoon.
गुड आफ्टरनून.
ಜಾಯ್ನ್ ಆಗಿದೆ.
हॅलो ऋतुजा. हॅलो ऋतुजा.
Yes, ma'am.
हां चालू कर.
Teachers and my dear friends. Today, there is awareness speech on International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking 27 with NSS Gramin Ayurvedic Medical College, Terda. I would like to welcome our chief guest, Dr. J. Dr. Bhati. We will start the program by watering the plants by teaching and non-teaching staff in the absence Thank you. Now there will be a prayer by Dr. Sampurna.
लोके जराभयविनाशनम् दातारमीशं विविधौषधीनां धन्वन्तरिं प्रमाणार्थं सर्वरोगनिवारकम् आयुर्वेदप्रवक्तारं वन्दे पीयूषदायकम् सर्वे जना सुखिनो भवन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति.
Now, thank you, ma'am. Now, a keynote address by Dr.
Good afternoon, one and all. It is a great honor for me to be in the room full of people who have gathered here for the event 26 June as the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking Awareness. Let me first thank NSS and Jawad Ayurveda and other. By the Revelation 42/112 of 7th December 1987, the General Assembly decided to observe 26 June as the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking as an expression of its determination to strengthen action and cooperation to achieve the goals of an international society free of drug abuse. Share facts on drugs, save lives, the theme of the 2021 International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, aim to combating misinformation and promote sharing the facts on drugs from health risks and solution to tackle the
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Today's meeting is dedicated to celebrating the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Since 1983, ma'am has
Share
studied.
facts on drugs, save lives, the theme of 2021 International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is at combating misinformation and promote sharing the facts on drugs from health risks and the solution to tackle the world drug problem to the evidence-based prevention, treatment and care. United Nations Office on Drugs and the Crime yearly provide the facts and the partial solution to the current world drug problem to attain a vision of a health for all based on the sciences. Today, the pandemic COVID-19 has brought an unpredictable public awareness on the health protection measures for staying health and most importantly protecting each other. A growing sense on global community and solidarity continues to merge, as does the need to ensure health care for all. With these few words, I take leave of you. Thank you.
Dr. Ma'am, born on 11th May 1983. Ma'am has studied primary school education from Mutugunda, high school and PUC from Gadak, undergraduation BAMS from DGM Ayurvedic Medical College Gadak, post-graduation in Sri BNM Rural Ayurvedic Medical College Vijaypura, that is PG in Dravyaguna. Ma'am has did dissertation work on experimental study on antiseptic ulcer activity of Daru Haridra on albino rat as a PG studies curriculum. Ma'am has guided for undergraduate students worked on Stanyajanana Karma of Chandrasura Rasa. Ma'am is presently working as HOD and Associated Professor in Department of Agata Tantra and Vyavhara Ayurveda, Ayurvedic JMC Medical College, Terdal. Today's topic is drug dependence and abuse. Now, I would hand over it to ma'am to deliver the speech.
Good afternoon to all. Myself, Dr. Shivalila Rajur, HOD and Associate Professor from Department of Agada Tantra and Vyavhara Ayurveda, Gramina Ayurvedic Medical College and Research Center, Terdal. First of all, I would like to thank our management for giving me an opportunity to speak on this event. And I also thank to our beloved principal, Dr. L.M. Biradar sir, too. The International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is also known as World Drug Day, which is celebrated on 26th June. 7th December 1987, the General Assembly of United States decided to observe 26th June every year as an International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. The day is dedicated to eradicating drug abuse and neutralize the systemic challenges which are pertaining to the illegal drug issues. The main objective of this day is to achieve the goal of world free from drug abuse and also to raise the awareness of the major problem of the illicit drug represent the society. The theme of this year 2021 is Share Facts on Drugs and Save Lives. Now, let us understand what is drug. A drug is an substance that when enters into our body or a living organism alters normal bodily functions, and drugs are also chemicals that change the way a person's body works by altering emotions and thoughts. Drugs have been a part of our culture since the middle of last century. Next, we will move towards what is a drug abuse. Drug abuse may be defined as a habitual use of drugs not needed for therapeutic purpose, but which affect the state of consciousness or to affect a body function unnecessarily. Continued use of drugs can lead to drug dependence, a state of physical and mental dependence also. Commonly abused drugs are marijuana, which is also known as bhang, cocaine, heroin, and alcohol. And sometimes sedatives like coffee and cigarettes can all be used, which are used for an harmful extent, are considered as abused drugs. Next, we will see the classification of drugs. The drugs are classified mainly into two parts, pharmaceutical drugs and recreational drugs. Pharmaceutical drugs are those drugs which are mainly used to treat the disease conditions. Example, aspirin, paracetamol, and brufen. Recreational drugs are those drugs which are used to gain the joy or happiness rather than their medicinal purpose. Example, alcohol, nicotine, and cocaine. Now, the cause and effects of drug addiction. Drug addiction is not a hallmark of moral failure or lack of willpower. It's a complex disease that serves long-term and extensive treatment. Just like any other chronic condition, people who have not struggled with the substance abuse, they may find that difficult to understand why the people or anybody will start to willingly themselves harm their health by using these abusive drugs. There are in fact many reasons why some people turn or start the using of these abusing drugs, and unfortunately all the consequences can be life-threatening. Every case of addiction is unique, and there are general patterns that indicate why some people use drugs and how they become addicted and how they develops the addiction and the consequences of drug abuse. We will see one by one. First, the classification of addictive drugs. Mainly, the addictive drugs are grouped into four groups: narcotics, depressants, hallucinogens, and stimulants. Example for narcotics, bhang; for depressants, alcohol, barbiturates, opioids, and for stimulants, the examples are cocaine, nicotine, and amphetamine. And hallucinogen drugs like datura, ketamine, and PO8. First, we'll see why the people use drugs. The causes differ from person to person. Generally, the people start using these drugs to escape from the pain or mask the pain. In some individuals, the onset of drug use can be from untreated psychiatric issues, including anxiety and depression. The rush of pleasure it causes using drugs can be provide temporary happiness for the suffering. The other issues include the following things: trauma or abuse, mental illness and low self-esteem, poverty, relationship problems, loss of loved one, and stress, chronic pain and medical conditions. Whatever may be the reason for the starting the drug abuse, once the addiction sets in, the disease usually spirals more and more out of their control. Now we will see how addiction develops. For most people, the initial decision to take drugs is voluntary, but as they are swept up into the cycle of addiction, the neural pathways in their brain changes, so they are less able to control their behavior and resist their intense impulses. The brain always rewards pleasurable experiences such as the good food, intimacy, and laughter, with surges of feel good chemicals like dopamine, but using by these abusing drugs, it triggers the release of these dopamines much more and than the intake of the chocolates and cutting does. And the rush of euphoria compels them to repeat the same experience. The more someone uses drugs, the more they condition their brain to anticipate the same substances, to get the pleasant sensations. That is why it's so difficult to stop the abused drugs. The brain becomes worried for addiction eventually. One's tolerance may build so much that addictive behavior no longer provides him any pleasure, and using drugs simply becomes a way to avoid withdrawal. They need drugs just to keep feeling normal. Thus, the habituating it starts. Now, who's most likely to be addicted and why? Not everyone who experiments with the drugs becomes an addict. There is no single factor that can predict whether someone will become addicted, though there are general, social, biological, and environmental factors that do increase the risk. Next, the signs and symptoms of drug abuse. First, we will see the physical signs. Bloodshot eyes, pupils larger or smaller than the usual, changes in appetite and sleep patterns will take place, and sudden weight loss or weight gain occurs in a person, and deterioration of physical appearance, unusual smells on breath, and impaired coordination. Behavioral changes, poor work, decline in performance, financial problems, secretive behaviors, sudden change in friends and associates, and accident or trouble prone, lack of motivation and withdrawal, and unexplained anxiety. The emotional signs, personality changes, sudden mood changes, irresponsible behavior, irritability, and poor judgment. Now we'll see what are the family hazards. They start to argue with the elders in a family, and they have a negative attitude towards the family members and breaking the rules, withdrawing from the family members. These all are the family changes. Next, the effects of drug abuse. Drug abuse leads to loss of coordination, poor judgment, and slowed reflexes and distorted vision. And it also causes the memory loss. Age-based statistics shows that almost 5.8% of the adult population and nearly of about 25% of its population are under this drug abuse. This drug abuse leads to the drug dependence, are of two types, physical dependence and mental dependence. In physical dependence, the body has been altered in ways that create carvings for the drug and manifests withdrawal symptoms. In mental dependence, individual believes themselves that the optimal state of well-being is achieved only by taking these drugs. Otherwise, they feel difficult to stay. Okay, this is about the mental dependence. Next, causes of drug abuse. The continuous intake of these drugs, it causes the unemployment and financial burdens, socio-civilization culture and experimentation and peer pressure, addiction, sexual involvement, failure in the exams, breakup in relationships, and it also causes depression, illegal relationship, and many more difficulties in their life. These abusing drugs taken in a various routes. Mainly they are taken through the oral route, injection and smoking, and also through the snorting. These all abusing drugs are grouped into many groups. Among them, stimulants are the main. For example, cocaine, nicotine, and amphetamine. Stimulants. Stimulants are drugs that stimulate the brain and the central nervous system, and they increase the state of mental alertness, and they decrease the appetite. Effects of stimulants on human body. They causes the wakefulness and alertness, increased energy level, restlessness, euphoria, confusion, and reduced appetite and increased tachypness, increased breathing and heart rate, and elevated blood pressure. Now we'll see about the cocaine. The scientific name of cocaine is erythrooxylone coca, which is used as a local anesthetic drug and also a CNS stimulant. The street name of cocaine is snow, crack, and also a nose candy is used as its synonym. Sign and symptoms of a cocaine abuse, it causes increased agitation, disinhibition, change in concentration and focus on any subject, and common cold-like symptoms, and it also causes increased movement. The side effects of chronic use of cocaine, it causes changes in the brain and it reduces the attention and it causes increased risk of strokes, insomnia, hypersomnia, and lethargy. It also leads a soreness and hoarse voice at the throat, and it causes the bronchospasm, dyspnea, infiltrates, eosinophilia, chest pain, and asthma. And it causes systematically a fever, and it causes rhinorrhea and the symptoms like bruxism in teeth. It increases the risk of infection in heart and it causes pruritus on the skin. Now we'll see about a mechanism of cocaine. The intake of cocaine will reduce the sodium transport, which act as a local anesthetic effect. It causes the local anesthetic effect and it increases the arrhythmia, which causes the QRS prolongation and QT prolongation in ECG, which leads to the death. And the intake of cocaine also increases the sympathetic output and catecholamines, which increases the heart rate, blood pressure, and contractility of the heart, which it leads to the increased oxygen demand, and this causes the ischemia, which leads to the infarction and by that death. The increased sympathetic output and increased catecholamines also causes the coronary spasm and vasoconstriction, which increases the platelet adherence and thrombus formation, which will lead to the decreased supply of oxygen and which causes the ischemia, by that the infarction, and it leads to death. The next drug is the heroin. It is a most infamous product of opium or poppy seeds. Currently, it is known as a white powder or black tar heroin. For its high purity, it has more the effects and it also a profitable drug. Next one is the nicotine. The scientific name of nicotine is Nicotina tobacum. which is mostly used as an addictive drug in India and which is also used as a stimulant. The side effects of nicotine are increased clotting tendency of the blood. It causes a bronchospasm, the tremors and pain in muscular region, and it also causes nausea, dry mouth, dyspepsia, diarrhea, and heartburn sensation, and it causes the joint pain, and it causes increased or decreased heart rate and increased blood pressure, tachycardia, and coronary artery constriction. It also causes the endocrine changes and hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance. How nicotine addiction takes place. Over a time, if nicotine affects the neurotransmitters in the brain and changing the way certain brain cells works, when one stops using the nicotine, the changes remains for a while until the brain can revert back to normal state. These changes are what cause the withdrawal symptoms and on characteristics of addiction. Now we will see the next drug, that is amphetamine. It is an potent CNS stimulant and it is used to treat the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The street name of amphetamine is black beauties or heart. By the long-term use of amphetamine, it affects the many systems of our body and it causes the psychosis and kidney failure, sexual dysfunction, sinusitis, and weight problems, and also skin abscess. The signs and symptoms of amphetamine abuse, it causes increased dry mouth, increased blood pressure, faster breathing, decreased appetite, and euphoria. The next groups of drug abuse are depressants. Depressant is a substance that reduces the normal body activity function and the instinctive desire such as appetite for food. It is also known as downers. The classification of depressants are alcohol, barbiturates, opioids, and benzodiazepines. The effects of depressant drugs are highly addictive and it produces the sedation and it causes the dizziness, hypnosis, and anxiety, and permanently it damages the developing fetus in pregnant women. Next, alcohol. Chronic alcohol use may result in memory loss, impaired judgment, and it also causes headaches, depression, anxiety, and insomnia. The long-term use of alcohol leads to cancer of esophagus, mouth, and throat, and it also causes heart disease, high blood pressure, stroke, and the continuous use of the alcohol causes liver diseases, liver cancer, chronic stomach problems, and it causes the impotency, reproductive disorders, muscle damage, and osteoporosis. Next, benzodiazepines. It is an anxiolytic drug and have a sedative, hypnotic, and anticonvulsant properties. The street name is downers, or it also called as goofball. Effects of benzodiazepines. Normal therapeutic dose cause the dry mouth, light headache, and confusion, whereas the acute overdose causes the prolonged sleep, decreased libido, and erection problems. Next one, we will see the mechanism of benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines binds with the specific regulatory site of GABA receptor in the brain, which enhance the GABA activity. This opens the channels and causes hyperpolarization, which leads to the CNS depression. Thus, the benzodiazepine act as a CNS depressant. Next group of drug is opioids. Synthetic and semi-synthetic compounds used as analgesics and suppress diarrhea, cough-like diseases also. The street name of opioids is dope or painkillers. The effect of opioids, the most common symptoms are constipation, dry mouth, sedation, and sweating. The less common symptoms are delirium, seizures, urinary retention, and hallucinations. The next group is morphine. Morphine is used as an analgesic and narcotic drug which act on CNS. Isolate from the crude opium. The morphine is isolated from the crude opium, and the street name of morphine is dragon or dope. The side effects of morphine, and it causes pneumonia, hypotension, and infrequency and constipation, urine retention, and it also causes nausea and emesis. The next group of drugs are hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are substances that alter sensory processing in the brain and causing perceptual disturbances, changes in thought and processing, and depolarization. The types of hallucinogens are psychedelics, example LSD, PO8, and dissociative drugs like magic mushroom, deliriants, datura, Jimson weed. How hallucinogens work? Hallucinogens can be used in many different ways. You can take them in the form of pill, or you can take them in the form of drink, or you can smoke. It all depends on the hallucinogen and the way it is formed. Once the hallucinogen is in your body, chemicals like serotonin and acetylcholine interfere with the neurotransmitters and cause the hallucinations. The hallucinogen high can last as little as 30 minutes and as long as 4 hours, depending on the hallucinogen and the amount you take. The next drug is lysergic acid diethylamide, which is also called as LSD. The street name of this drug is Superman, or which is also called as Golden Dragon or Jan. The side effects of LSD is it causes a hyperthermia, excessive saliva production in the mouth, and clenching of jaw, and it elevates the sugar levels in the blood. It causes hyperplexia, and it causes the dilatation of the pupils, and it causes the goosebumps and perspiration, paresthesia in skin, and it causes the increased heart rate. Now we will see the mechanism of action of SD. Agonism or antagonism types. The LSD 5-HT agonist at presynaptic receptors in CNS, it activates the sympathy hallucination with brilliant colors and mood alterations. And on systematic examination, it shows hyperplexia, nausea, muscle weakness, and psychotic changes. The next drug is cannabis sativa. Common name is ganja or bhang. The most common symptoms are dizziness, dry mouth and drowsiness, and lower concentration. The common symptoms are euphoria, blurred vision, red eye, and headache. The rare symptoms are anxiety, ataxia, and tachycardia. Until now, we discussed about the abused drugs and their side effects. Now we will discuss on a next topic, that is a drug trafficking, which is a subpart of this topic only. The drug trafficking is a global illicit trade involving the cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and sale of substances which are subject to drug prohibition law. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is continuously monitoring and researching global illicit drug markets in order to gain a more comprehensive understanding of their dynamics. India has been involved in drug trafficking since from 4 decades. Although India has been a traditional consumer of opium, cannabis, derivatives, but the trends and patterns of drug trafficking demonstrate that there is a gradual shift from traditional or natural drugs towards synthetic drugs that are being trafficked and consumed in the country. The various studies and media report indicate that drug consumption and trafficking in the country impact showing an using trend. Apart from the narcotics in India, has been experiencing a significant rise in the use of psychotropic substances and medicinal preparations like amphetamine, methamphetamine, and dextroprophehexane, ketamine, and acetic anhydride among addictants. Since late 1990s, rising price of heroin and easy availability of these synthetic drugs have propelled this shift in the consumption pattern and also their trafficking pattern in India. Now we will see about the India and drug abuse. According to a report by the United Nations Office on Global Drugs and Crime, India is one of the major hubs of illicit drug trade, ranging from age-old cannabis to newer preparations like tramadol. The money which is collected from the drug trade is used to finance the terrorism, human trafficking, illegal business, and it is aggravated the crime scenario in India. India lies in the two major illicit opium regions in the world, in between the Golden Crescent area in the west and the Golden Triangle in the east, which makes it viable hub of the illicit drug trade. Here in Golden Triangle, the nations like Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, and Southeast Asia parts are covered, and in Golden Crescent area, it includes Pakistan, Iran, and Afghanistan. As India lies in between these two areas, it became an viable hub of the illicit drug trade. The National Drug Dependence Center of All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi, was conducted a survey on citizens between the age of 10 to 75 years who were questioned regarding the substance abuse. In this survey, it is found that 5.7 crore people in the country suffered from alcohol-related problems. And this also includes the categories involved in this: bang, opioids and pharmaceutical opioids, sedatives, inhalants, and hallucination drugs also. And this drug trafficking is also one of the threat to national security. The illegal movements of these narcotics and drugs pose a significant threat to the national security. The break of the international borders of the country by drug traffickers leads to use the same routes for smuggling of weapons as well as terrorists in the country. Last but not least, large-scale availability of the narcotics and drugs encourages demand for narcotics by domestic peoples also, consumption of which produces dysfunctional behaviors, thereby creating law and order problems in the society. It also causes a huge economic drain on the country and affects political process and further corruptive state institutions. After indulging many laws, what is the response in India? Nowadays, India has adopted a comprehensive approach to reducing supply as well as demand for narcotics and drugs. The approach includes four main elements. They are ensuring physical security of the borders and coastal areas by strengthening the patrolling and surveillance, and enacting legislation such as Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, and also eliciting cooperation from neighbor countries by several bilateral and multilateral agreements on prevention of illicit trafficking drugs and chemicals, and cooperating with voluntary organizations in the endeavor to prevent abuse of narcotic and synthetic drugs. Now, next point is treatment for drug addiction. The person who is under the drug addiction should be hospitalized first, and his behavioral and occupational therapies should be given, and change in addict's social environment should be changed. Prevention and control of drug abuse. It needs the following things to prevent and control the drug abuse. The causes of drug taking behavior should be known, and sources of illicit drugs, drug laws, treatment programs, and community organizing skills. The persistence and cooperation of various individuals and agencies is also needed to prevent and control the drug abuse. Next, elements of prevention. The elements which are needed for prevention of drug abuse are education, treatment, public policy, and law enforcement. First two, that is education and treatment, they reduce the demand for drugs. And the next two, that is public policy and law enforcement, they reduce the supply and availability of the drugs. By that, by implementing these four things, that is education, treatment, public policy, and law enforcement, we can prevent the drug and their abuses. Conclusion: no part of the world is free from the curse of drug trafficking. Despite of this major prevention of drug trafficking in India has achieved only a partial success. It has affected the millions of peoples, including the youths. Government should set target to reduce the drug abuse level. At our individual level, we should contribute eradicating these problems. In prevention programs should involve family, schools, and media also. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Please. Now, there is a vote of thanks by Dr. T.C. Atni, sir.